Cisco and HashiCorp's Terraform series, Infrastructure as Code, focusing on day 0 and day 1 deployments. NAT policy. This is going to be a very quick one. We're just going to create an empty NAT policy ready for the actual NAT rules that we're going to create a little bit later. So let's go ahead and look at the repository and GitHub from DevNet, and you can see it's very simple. We're just going to create an empty NAT policy. So let's look at var.tf. There's our variables. Let's look at the data supporting those variables in terraform.tf vars, and we'll go to main.tf. Looks almost the same, probably is. Maybe the name is changed and that's it. All right, let's go ahead and do initialization. And once that's complete, hopefully success here, we will go ahead and do Terraform apply. Now, as always, the apply provides you insight into what is going to be deployed, and so you have the opportunity to say yes or no, unless you do auto response, and we did not. So we should see here that we are creating, this is all additions, this is brand new. We'll go ahead and hit yes. Creating the NAT policy. Again, I'm running on an Intel NUC. So a little bit slower. It's added. Let's go jump to the interface and check to see if it's there. Beauty. TNAT policy. FTD NAT policies, the description. Let's just go ahead and do the destroy. Let's see if we can clean this up. And it's saying it's going to destroy that policy that we created. It's still going through that process. Now it's starting to do the destroy. One destroyed. Let's refresh to ensure that that did take place. And look at that. It's gone. Disappeared. We can jump real quick to audit. And here we can see Terraform has logged in, new session, create new PAT policy initially, or sorry, NAT policy, not PAT policy, and then go ahead and delete that policy. So worked as expected, easy peasy. We're going to create a NAT policy with some manual NAT rules. All right, let's just jump right into it. Let's go to Terraform's code that DevNet has shared with the community, and let's have a look here. So we've got some objects that we're going to reference, both security zones and network objects. We'll create that NAT policy, and then we've got some manual NAT rules. You can see there's a variety of options here where they're putting placements, there's static NAT rules, and then there's some output at the end. But let's take that and let's modify it for our needs. Again, we'll look at var.tf. There's our variables. We'll look at terraform.tf vars, which is the data supporting the variables. And then we'll jump to main.tf and break this down. So we're going to reference some security zones and a network object. So we're going to pull that automatically from Firepower and use them. And so we're going to create a couple of objects as well. So we're going to create a internal IP and an external IP that we're going to NAT to. And then we've got some output from that. We'll create that policy, that NAT policy with nothing in it, and then we'll add those rules to that policy. So the first rule here is DMZ security zone to outside security zone, original source using the internal IP of the host, and a destination is going to translate that to an external IP address. And that's it. We'll do some output and be done with it. Now, you can do a little bit more around what you're natting with manual NAT as an example, the destination. We're not doing that here. I'm just keeping it pretty clean and simple. We'll go ahead and apply after we've done that initialize. Here's all the additions. We have an opportunity to say no here. We're going to say yes. We're going to plow through this and let Terraform create that manual NAT policy. Again, this is an example. Leverage what you see in GitHub and then modify based on your needs. All right, we'll refresh. There we go. We've got a policy in place. Now let's see if there's any rules inside there. Let's go ahead and hit edit. And look at that, static DMZ to outside zone. There's my internal IP address. Destination is interface. Translated sources is interface. And then that external IP for destination. So you can see here. In fact, I would change this to actually say translated source is actually the address itself. But you get the idea. Pretty easy stuff to do, simple modifications, deploy it. Now, if you didn't like this or the rule wasn't exactly like in my case, the rule wasn't exactly what I wanted. I did a typo or something and I lost track of where I was. I can very quickly come in and destroy. Now, this is just showing you the audit and tracking of the creation of those objects in NAT policy. But I can very quickly destroy what I've done. And then modify the main.tf, make the changes needed, and then go ahead and move forward and push that again and make sure that the outcome is based on my needs. So we're going to go ahead and destroy this one. And we're doing the auto approve, so it's going to automatically come through. Pretty close to being done. Let's see here. Yes. So it's destroying it now. Well, still destroying. Remember, this is on an Intel NUC with a whole bunch of other VMs on it. But it still runs pretty good for what I have running on it. We'll do a quick refresh and policy gone. Pretty simple. NAT policy and auto NAT rules. Let's get started. Let's jump over to DevNet. It's GitHub repository for Firepower. We're going to look at the auto NAT rules. And you can see here we've got some data references from Firepower around objects and interfaces. We create the policy, the NAT policy, and then we add our rules. The first one's a static auto NAT policy that does some port translation. The next one after that is a dynamic auto NAT policy that does a PAT using a pool. And then we've got interface PAT on the final one. Again, dynamic auto NAT policy. And then some output. Now let's use that information and let's create a policy that's fitting for our environment. So let's look at the var.tf. There's our variables. Again, terraform.tf vars is the data supporting the variables. And we'll go ahead and look at main.tf. Now we've got our providers, our FMC connection details. We're pulling a couple of security zones, and then we're creating a couple of objects here. We've got some output. We create our NAT policy, and then we create our specific rules. So we got DMZ to outside, and we've got a object group that we're going to use, and we're going to use interface PAT. And then we've got another one here that's a static auto NAT policy, DMZ to outside, and again, it's going to use an object, an internal IP translated to an external IP address, specific IP address that is. All right, so let's go ahead. We run the initialization. We're going to go ahead and hit the apply. Here, there's the details. We have an opportunity to review this. In this case, we're just going to go ahead and hit yes. Now we're starting to see the creation of that. And our objects are being created first. Now we can see here we've got some completion. Moving along, there's some new rules, and bingo bango, we're done. Let's do a quick refresh. And there it is. Policies there, and there's the specifics, right? DMZ to outside, and we've got some objects here. And then we've got our dynamic at the bottom here, where it's taking the DMZ network and doing interface PAT. Okay, so that's great. We didn't assign it to a device. Now, assigning it to a device is exactly what we've done in the access policies. The difference is you're going to reference the NAT policy, of course. Let's go ahead and destroy everything that we've just created. And we can see everything that it's reversing. There it is, deleting the objects or destroying the objects. And it does it in order, as I mentioned many times. Terraform tracks that. And again, you can use some capabilities like depends on to make sure that you're deploying technology in the manner of which you want. We'll quickly do a refresh. And there we go. It's gone.